Get rid of the fun music. Always fun to have a little bit of charm there happening in the background. Excellent. Alrighty. Let's get started, folks. Today, welcome first of all to Hi Mama Helps webinars. We're talking about the science of playful learning, and really, I am not talking. I'm going to be handing it over to our special guests today. I'm very excited to welcome them. But before we do, let's jump into the important bits. If you're just joining us, please do make sure to pop your chat over to all panelists, all attendees. This way, folks get to see where you're coming from. Keep it on coming, but we're going to jump into the fun of this is not personal, financial, or legal advice, just to make sure I am the last person you probably want to get that from. Trust me, the last person. At the end of the day, we want you guys to take away, whether it's tips, tricks, techniques, even questions that you started thinking about. We want you to start thinking about your classrooms. We want to make sure that we're giving you, obviously like great things around what's going on within your center and maybe different techniques that you can even try. If you are looking for support, make sure you do reach out to the right people, whether that be, your licensing rep or a financial advisor or legal advisor, whoever that may be. Just make sure you are chatting with the right people before you make any, large and big changes. Okay. Let's jump in here. We're going to just give a quick listen to our land acknowledgement here.
Hi Mama acknowledges that our main headquarters is situated in Toronto, Ontario, on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Toronto itself is a word that originates from the Mohawk word takaranto, meaning the place in the water where the trees are standing. As participants and guests in today's webinar, we are coming together from many different places around the world. We encourage you to learn about and acknowledge the land from which you participate.
Ms. Kaya, I'm going to hand it over to you for a moment.
Thank you, Ria. With the recent discovery of the remains of 215 missing First Nations children found at the site of a former Kamloops residential school in British Columbia, we are gruesomely reminded of Canada's colonial history and the systemic issues that persist today. We encourage our audience who live and work on Canadian land to learn about the history of the land which they occupy and the role that Canada has played in the residential school system. Thank you.
All right, let's jump into our diversity and inclusion statement really quick.
Hi Mama is committed to fostering an inclusive and welcoming environment for our employees, customers, and community. Hi Mama welcomes and celebrates individuals of all backgrounds, orientations, and identities. Our Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee aims to ensure we provide a safe environment for everyone to thrive while bringing their authentic selves to work. Our mission is to promote an inclusive workspace for all employees through education, discussion, and celebration of our differences. Embracing these differences while coming together with a common purpose is what makes our team extra special.
All right. Housekeeping as always, folks, the whole session is recorded. And every time I say that, I double check we're recording. The whole session's recorded. It will be made available with the show notes. So if you do want to, send it out to some staff members or anything like that, other educators, coworkers, things like that, it will be made available in either tomorrow or early next week. Just how long it processes, just what takes me. So if you need some closed captions, do please hit the CC tab there. They're available for you, and we are recording with them on as well. With the show notes will come, obviously, like I said, the recording, as well as the slides, as well as the certificate for you. So if you aren't able to maybe stay for the whole session, we will be able to get it out for you, and we'll be sending out the certificates for those who are in the live session a little later. Last but not least, if you're having any connection issues, please do seek support.zoom.us. They are the best for when using Zoom. They know their product the best, and they can help you out the best. There's a reason why I have husband IT. So at the end of the day, please do connect up with them if you are having any issues with Zoom. All right. Before we dive into the fun, one last little quick piece here before we jump into intros. But as always, folks, if you've never heard of Hi Mama, if this is maybe your first webinar with us, please do check us out. So we are a childcare app. We are the #1 app. And, there's so many pieces that you can use, whether you're in the classroom working on the floor. So, learning development, whether you're communicating with parents, or if you are in the office and you're doing more of the admin work, whether that be billing or things like that. we're here to help you out. We'd love to have further conversations, so please do connect up with us. I would love for you to tell the folks on our side that Ria sent you, and know that we have a team here to help you. So from our support team, our onboarding team, we're here to help you out, and all of our free resources. And don't forget as well, we are a B certified company, and what that means is we actually positively socially impact the community in which we are involved in this case being the education space. Huge piece. Before we jump in, I have one last piece here. I'm going to add, if I can find everything here, launch up the poll for today. Love to know, if you can take just a second, love to know who exactly is joining us today. So whether you're, center owner, director, administrator of any kind, if you're an educator, you can actually pop in and just answer up that poll quick. And we'd love to know a little bit more about how you track children's social emotional development at your center, whether that's through online documentation. Much of myself, I can say we used paper. I'd love to know exactly what's going on. And then of course, if you do want to learn a little bit more, we're more than happy to connect up with you. You can let us know. Tons of you are using Hi Mama already, and not to worry if you're not quite ready, we'll be here when you are ready. So I'll give you guys just a second to warm to here. So this way we can actually get a couple votes in from you folks. I know it takes a second to pop up on your side. Fantastic. I'd say we got a large amount of teachers here today. Many educators, over 70%. Fantastic. I hope everyone's doing well. I know many of you are working, so I want to make sure to jump in one more moment here, and then we're gonna jump into the fun of everything. Very excited to jump in because that's really what we're in for today. Alrighty, folks, we're gonna end up the poll here. Thank you so much. I'm going to give you guys a sneak peek. You can see it here. Many educators, like I said, welcome folks, and tons of you folks are doing online documentation. Fantastic to see. All righty. If you've never been with us before, I'm Ria. I'm the early childhood educator here at Hi Mama, one of many actually, and I'm the community ambassador. I have no fun facts today. I'm actually just really looking forward to the hot weekend we're supposed to have here in Toronto. On the chat, please do say hi to the lovely Miss Kaya. Miss Kaya, come on and join me here. I know you've already been with us, but any fun facts for us today, Kaya?
Fun fact is I'm moving in 9 days. So excited for that.
I was gonna say excited or nervous.
I'm both. But yeah, I'm really happy that our audience is no longer going to have to be like looking into my living room. I'm gonna actually have my own office. So just you wait. Just you wait.
I'm excited for your move, Kaya. All right, let's jump into the fun. I'm very excited to welcome co-founders Erin and Robin from Scientific Mommy on. Ladies, please do join us here. Very excited to hand it over to you both. But maybe before we do, tell us a little bit about yourselves, and maybe a fun fact or something you'd like to share with the crew that's joined us today.
So I'm Robin. Thank you so much for that introduction and for having us here today. It's so cool that so many people have joined. I'm in my last year of a PhD program at New York University. Before coming to NYU, I worked in preschools and was just fascinated by how children learn. So I wanted to take a deeper dive into that, learning about what goes on behind the scenes in children's development. So I decided to pursue research. Erin, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much again for having us and for the lovely introduction. I'm a professor at New York University where I direct the early childhood program. And I have a research lab there that focuses on social emotional learning in the early years. And I am also co-founder of Scientific Mommy, along with Robin, a platform that really focuses on bringing bite-sized bits of valid, accurate research to parents and teachers, mostly via the Instagram platform, but also through our website and Twitter account. And I also just started a podcast, Parenting Understood. So I'm really happy to talk more about play today.
I'm excited. All right, I'm going to hand it over here, Robin. I'm going to stop sharing. It's all yours. Let you take it away. Folks will be, of course, we're on the chat, but I'm going to let Robin have more fun here and dive into everything that she has prepared. So.
Okay, great. So, all right, I'm just figuring out how I can control the, okay. So the driving question of so much of what we do as researchers is how can we best support young children in becoming confident, compassionate, and content individuals? So our goal with Scientific Mommy is to get a little closer to answering that question by sharing studies with parents and with educators in an engaging and accessible way. So unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation about child development online. And it's not necessarily because someone out there is trying to deliberately mislead people. It's more about how difficult it is sometimes to accurately translate research. It's hard. It's hard to access it. It usually stays in academic journals, out of reach for the people who need that information the most. So we want to share that information and empower caregivers with cutting edge knowledge about play and about the science of learning. So practitioners have advocated for play for decades, spreading the word that play is not just a break, but the driver of serious learning. And research has shown that through play, children build all sorts of skills, from social emotional skills to cognitive skills. And before I dive in here, I want to say that if you're here, then you probably already know just how valuable play is for children's development. So a lot of what I'm going to share with you is going to be familiar. Erin and I have talked a lot about how different communities in the child development space, psychologists, researchers, teachers, pediatricians, play therapists, we all come at these topics from slightly different angles, but we don't always communicate across these different communities. So one of the best things about Scientific Mommy for me personally has been hearing different perspectives on topics that I previously only would have thought about through the lens of a researcher. So I think it's so valuable to be here with you today so that we can learn from one another. So for this webinar, we're going to dig into the science of playful learning, starting with current psychological perspectives on play. Then we're going to talk about how caregivers can support children's social emotional learning through play, including some of the research that Erin and I have conducted in New York City public schools. And then we're going to touch on a hot topic, which is how caregivers can encourage children to play independently. And then as a bonus, we're going to share a preview of a new course that we're working on, which focuses on how caregivers can build children's early math skills through play. So our other upcoming courses are about how caregivers can draw from new insights from research to build children's social emotional skills, especially as they transition back to normal life post-COVID. And the third is going to be about children as scientists and how children starting from infancy develop an understanding of physics, of natural science, and the world around them. Okay, so why is this important? Knowing about cutting edge perspectives and research on play is going to help you advocate for play in the classroom. So in an environment where teachers often find themselves pushing back against pressure to put academics before play, it's really vital that teachers feel confident in their ability to be an advocate for the power of play to drive learning. So we're going to get started with playful learning. So when I first started studying child development and education, I remember having conversations about the value of free play over direct instruction. And the way the conversations were framed, it felt like you either had to be all in for free play or for direct instruction. And maybe you felt this way too. And I think there's room for a more nuanced conversation about play and learning. So to move away from an all or nothing conceptualization of play, researchers have recently reframed play as a spectrum. So on one end, you have free play being completely child-led, and then on the other end, you've got direct instruction, which could be completely adult-led and has an explicit learning goal in mind. In between, you've got games, which are often designed and scaffolded by adults. And then you have guided play, which is where the child directs their play, but their caregiver nudges them towards a learning goal. And the reason this reframe is so important is that rather than think of play as having to be completely free play or completely, child-directed. This highlights how caregivers can calibrate their degree of scaffolding in different play scenarios. So different types of play along the spectrum work better in different environments for different learning goals. So the type of play I'm going to highlight here is guided play. So guided play has been shown to be effective, even more so than free play, for cultivating skills ranging from STEM knowledge to social emotional skills. It's child directed, but the caregiver nudges them towards that learning goal. So they can do this by offering suggestions or asking open-ended questions. And they can also create learning opportunities that fit the child's developmental strengths while leaving plenty of space for the child to drive their own exploration and discovery. So you might be thinking, this sounds like what I do all day long as a teacher or as a parent. You create learning opportunities, you make materials accessible, you might set up stations, you scaffold your children's learning, you go on field trips or outings, and you try to make those experiences meaningful. And all of this falls into the category of guided play. You might not use the term guided play, but you're doing it. Guided play is not co-opted play. So imagine that a child is building a school out of blocks. An adult sees that child has put dolls in the block structure and says, "Oh, what a cool house." And the child initiated the context, but the adult unintentionally redirects the child's vision of their play. This is called, by researchers, it's called co-opted play. And this is why it's so important to observe. We are going to circle back to a really cool study that takes this principle of guided play and applies it to early math learning. But for now, let's look at this question again. So how can we support young children in becoming confident, compassionate, and content individuals? I know this is a big question, and research on social emotional learning is getting us a little bit closer to answering it. So social emotional learning is made up of 5 core skills: self-awareness, which is knowing one's strengths and limitations; self-management, which is effectively managing stress, controlling impulses, and motivating oneself to set and achieve goals; social awareness, which is understanding the perspectives of others and empathizing with them; relationship skills, which is communicating clearly, listening well, cooperating with others, resisting peer pressure, negotiating conflict constructively, and seeking and offering help when needed. And last, responsible decision making, which is making constructive choices about personal behavior and social interactions. And so research has shown that when caregivers support these skills, children benefit in all sorts of ways. Not only are they developing these specific social emotional skills, but these skills translate to other aspects of their development as well. So when a child has a handle on social emotional learning, it sets them up to make the most of learning opportunities. They can pay attention better, they can nurture relationships with their friends and with their teachers, they are less likely to have trouble regulating their behavior. These are life skills that, when cultivated, help children thrive. Okay, so we're gonna back up now and talk about how social emotional learning research is conducted. You've probably heard this phrase that correlation is not causation. So randomized trials allow us to draw conclusions about causation. If you're not quite sure what a randomized trial is, then you're not alone. Only about 1 in 2 Americans can say with certainty what they are, according to the National Academy of Sciences. So in a randomized trial, children are randomly assigned to different groups. One group will act as a baseline to which other groups can be compared. Setting up a study like this allows researchers to be confident that a program is driving any change that they observe in children's skills. This is so valuable because it gives us convincing evidence that we can use to advocate for different programming and get funding. From testing social emotional learning programs this way, we know that they work, and we're learning about who they work best for and how they work in the long term. So one program that's been tested this way is called Ruler from the Yale Center of Emotional Intelligence. And Ruler focuses on engaging children in activities that help them recognize, understand, label, express, and regulate emotion. And foundational to the program is the acknowledgement that no emotion is good or bad. Emotions like anger or sadness are recognized as valuable and important. So instead of discussing emotions as positive or negative, children discuss emotions on a continuum of unpleasant to pleasant and low to high energy. And children are encouraged to talk about all types of emotions with peers and adults without concern that one emotion is more readily accepted than another. So the focus is allowing children to express their feelings so that they feel valued and supported in all of their experiences and not only just positive ones. A fundamental aspect of play that supports social emotional learning are serve and return interactions. So like in a tennis match, the child serves a ball, directing their play partner's attention and initiating a back and forth rich interaction. Toys can help facilitate these serve and return interactions by acting as a medium through which children communicate, self-discover, and share their thoughts and feelings. So with toys, the child can take the lead and they can express these complex emotions that might otherwise go unsaid. And part of what makes puppets, dolls, or stuffed animals such helpful tools for this is that compared to asking a child a direct question, using a puppet creates psychological distance between the child and the topic. They express and process their emotions through the toy, which lets them zoom out a little bit and talk about topics that might otherwise be too overwhelming if the child realizes that they're the focus of the conversation. So we used puppets in a randomized trial of a social emotional learning program with 5 and 6-year-old children. And it echoes what play therapists have long said about the power of toys for social emotional development. So in our study, children were given the option to self-identify with one of 4 puppets based on how they react in new situations and how comfortable they are making new friends. So they then played with peers who chose the same puppet as themselves, as well as with those who chose a different puppet. And so with the puppet as a focus, the children spoke to one another about how their puppet's feelings might be similar or different in various scenarios, like approaching someone to ask them to play, or asking the teacher for help, or handling a conflict with a classmate. So to test the impacts of the program, kids were randomly assigned to participate in either the program or in a reading group. And the results indicated that the program was effective in supporting children's social skill development and emotion regulation. And what's really exciting about this research is that we've since tracked these kids. They're now in 6th and 7th grade, and we're still conducting analyses to find out the full extent of the long-term impacts. But so far, we know that kids who participated in the program performed better on math and reading, even in 3rd and 4th grade. And also, the kids who had strong academic skills as kindergartners benefited even more from the program, and their impacts have lasted as long as through 6th grade. So what does this tell us? Investing in children's social emotional learning pays off. This type of long-term research gives us the evidence that we need to make that case. Okay, so before moving on to independent play, we're going to pause for a moment because I know I've said a lot. Some key points that we've covered are: 1, randomized controlled trials are the gold standard in research because they let us go beyond correlation and talk about causation. Randomized controlled trials have shown us that social emotional learning programs work, and they've also given us really valuable insights into what works, how it works, and how we can leverage that knowledge in the classroom and at home. And last, one of the key ingredients of this type of program is that they encourage children to experience their emotions, view them as valid, and not dismiss them as negative. So now we're going to switch gears and talk about independent play. I'll preface this by saying that this is more geared towards parents, but I'll be curious to hear from you if you're a teacher. I want to hear how this discussion relates to your practice in the classroom. So when children play by themselves, research has shown that it buffers parents against burnout by providing them with much needed space to replenish and to get work done. More and more online content is focusing on sharing strategies with parents to support independent play. And this demand for evidence-based strategies, I think, is likely to outlast the pandemic, especially as workplaces shift towards flexible work from home policies. But independent play isn't just a matter of convenience for parents. Through independent play, children also develop their sense of agency, their problem-solving skills, their self-regulation, and their autonomy. So what can research tell us about how parents can encourage their children to play independently? So like other types of guided play, independent play can be scaffolded and it can be supported. Playing alone is a skill and it can be difficult at first, especially for younger children. I find it helpful to think about the layers of this in terms of a child's play environment, their toys and materials, and then things that are internal to the child, like their individual characteristics and their mood. So we're going to cover 5 strategies, starting with toy rotation, and then we'll cover practice and setting realistic expectations, giving children clearly defined tasks, the importance of observation, and play planning. So starting with toy rotation, one study found that children play more creatively when they have fewer toys around. So the researchers presented toddlers with either 4 or 16 toys, and then they sat back and observed for about 20 minutes. When the toddlers were presented with 16 toys, they moved from toy to toy. On average, they played with 8 of the 16 toys during the 20 minutes, and none of those toddlers played with just one toy. When the toddlers were only presented with 4 toys, they spent more time playing with one single toy. They were more focused as they played, and they used the toy in a variety of ways, showing greater curiosity and creativity. So as toddlers, children are beginning to develop their attention skills. It can be difficult for them to hold their attention on any given toy or activity. However, the results from this study suggest that toddlers are capable of focusing on one toy if there aren't too many toys around to distract them. And the same concept comes into play when we think about how we store toys. If we think about it from a child's perspective, how many toys do they have access to? What can they reach or open without having to ask for help? The more their play environment allows them to be autonomous, the more easily independent play will come to them. It's important that caregivers have patience and realistic expectations as their children practice playing on their own. So at first, a child might only play by themselves for a couple minutes at a time, but gradually and with support, they can play independently for longer periods. So according to a small study published a couple of years ago, giving a child a clearly defined task may be more effective at promoting independent play than giving broad directions. So for example, instead of saying, I need to finish reading this, please go play with your toys, caregivers can try saying, here's some puzzles, do 2 of them while I finish reading this. And the researchers found that this second way of phrasing a specific play-based task led children to play longer by themselves. But it's worth noting that this was a very small study, and it's not going to be the best strategy in every context. So it might work if you're a parent and you need 15 minutes to get something done, but it might not be the best strategy for longer stretches of time. So if a parent is looking to build their child's ability to play for 3-hour stretches while they work from home, then we know that play that is child-led is generally more conducive to extended periods of independent play. Observation is key. So what works for one child might be completely different than for another. And what works for one child one day might not work the next. And this comes down to observing individual kids. What time of day do they tend to play independently? Is it when they're tired and winding down? Or is it when they're excited and energized with lots of play ideas? Do they get distracted when the TV is on or music is on in the background? So by taking the time to observe a child, you hone your ability to troubleshoot and to create a play environment that is a good fit for them. And this is one that if you're a teacher, you might have heard of, or maybe you've even tried it before. So there's research that has shown that spending a few minutes creating a play plan together in the morning can help children learn to play independently for longer and foster complex play narratives. So a play plan is a tool that some preschool teachers use at the beginning of the school day. The teacher talks to the child about their plan with the goal of having them stick to it, often for several hours. The teacher also helps them document their plan. And depending on a child's developmental level, the plan can be a drawing or it can be a simple sentence. And the teacher can also nurture children's planning skills by asking them open-ended questions about their plan. And I think the concept of a play plan might seem a little contradictory. Play is usually thought of as this spontaneous thing, but a plan implies structure. But research has shown that play planning can combine the benefits of play with an exercise in cognitive and literacy skills. So having children decide for themselves how to spend their time encourages the development of their self-regulation. Given that play evolves as children develop, the characteristics of toys that promote independent play are going to change over time. And what we think are key ingredients are developmental appropriateness, versatility, and of course, safety. So the developmental demands of the toy have to fit with the child. If it's too hard to manipulate, then they're more likely to get frustrated and lose interest. It should be versatile enough that it can be used in a variety of ways. And it needs to be something that caregivers feel comfortable allowing their child to play with by themselves. Cognitive skills like the ability to plan and pay attention are also related to independent play. So older kids who have better planning skills and can set up incredibly complex play scenarios that last for multiple days. So around the age of 7 to 12 years old, some kids create an elaborate imaginary world called a paracosm that they revisit again and again, engaging in long stretches of independent play. And this often involves creating a cast of characters, artifacts like maps or currency, and devising a complex system of rules governing their imagined world. I think it's so cool. Okay, so this is our little sneak preview of our upcoming course on math and play. It's built around the concepts of number talk, guided play, and best practices from research on early childhood math programs. So for this, I'm going to talk a little bit about number talk. You've probably heard that it's good for babies and toddlers to hear a lot of speech to boost their language skills. The same is true for number talk. So a study found that the amount of number talk children hear as toddlers was linked to their math ability in preschool. And number talk includes things like labeling digits, cardinal values, spatial language, numbers for measurement, and counting. Now, a striking finding from the study was the wide range in how much number talk toddlers were exposed to. So while some parents used an average of over 30 number words per hour, other parents only used one number word every 2 hours. This means that over the course of a week, some kids hear as many as 1,799 number words, while others only hear about 28 number words. This isn't just for parents too. They also observed preschool teachers in another study and found a similarly large gap. So our goal with this math course is to show parents and preschool teachers how they can weave in number talk seamlessly into daily activities, into play, and even story time. This is especially important during the summer when kids' math skills tend to slip. Research has shown that literacy skills tend to stay strong over the summer because summer reading is such a strong focus and parents feel confident about reading with their kids. We want caregivers to feel just as confident about supporting their kids' math skills. So let's tie this back to guided play. Say your learning goal is for a child to become familiar with what makes a triangle a triangle. Research has found that in preschool and kindergarten, kids tend to learn their shapes through rote memorization, but they only truly start to understand the defining features of shapes in second grade. So the researchers wondered, well, is this because preschoolers just aren't ready to understand shapes features? Or does this have something to do with how they're learning about shapes? So using a randomized control trial, they learn that children learn about shapes much better when they have exaggerated versions of shapes. So think of the shape toys that you have at home or in your classroom. Most of them are probably, typical, nicely proportioned shapes. And as far as I know, these are the only types of shape toys that are on the market. So kids learn that a triangle is an equilateral, perfect looking triangle. They tie that label to that specific version of that shape. And so in the study, giving kids quote unquote weird versions of shapes sparked conversations about their characteristics. Number talk flourished and kids learned much more effectively. This is a study that just came out, and there are tons more like it that we're going to cover in the course. So as a final recap, we've learned how caregivers can scaffold and use principles from guided play to set the stage for independent play. Conversations and interactions with caregivers are powerful drivers for children's learning. And last, play builds children's skills across all areas of their development. So thank you so much for joining us. And thank you again to Hi Mama for inviting us to host this webinar. We have a survey that we'd love for you to fill out to help us improve. You can find us on social media. You can find us on our website. We would love to connect with you. And with that, I think we'll open it up to questions.
Robin, that was absolutely fantastic. I'm not going to lie, I was very just involved in what you were saying about all of the research that's gone behind so many different things. And I was so intrigued. And then all of a sudden we're here and I'm like, oh my goodness, we're here. I'm super excited. I'm going to just bump you out here and steal the screen back just for open Q&A. But maybe, I don't know who wants to start here, but I'm going to start with the first question because we've seen it come up for your math course. Do you guys have an anticipation of when it's going to start or when you're launching it, or Erin or Robin, whoever would like to answer?
So I think our goal is probably late June. That's our goal.
Say July. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's fantastic. And actually, one of the questions that I actually had coming with it is, why is there such a gap? And I know you, Robin, you had mentioned during your presentation about, over the summer we tend to focus a lot more on reading because yes, parents do feel more confident reading with their children. But why would there be such a gap? Is it just maybe lack of conversation pieces, maybe lack of knowledge? Is there any particular reason why there'd be such a gap for the number talk?
So that's a great question. And we kind of have to theorize about the why behind the finding, right? So I can tell you that the researchers did test for things like socioeconomic status. That wasn't driving the results that they found. They also controlled for how much the families were talking in general. Was it just because some families were more talkative than others? That didn't explain it either. My theory is that a lot of parents have this underlying sense of math anxiety. It's pretty common, and they end up talking about math less.
I wouldn't be shocked actually if that ends up being the case. I can even say that for myself. Like it took me a while to incorporate more math in my classroom because it took me a while to get comfortable talking about it. So I wouldn't be surprised, and I'm excited to see what more comes from that. I want to back up. One of the questions was about your ruler acronym. Could you maybe highlight that once again, or maybe just give us a quick run through again of what that was?
Sure. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm losing my voice here. Whoops.
Erin's falling down, guys.
I'm phone down. Sorry.
It's all good.
My tween, even though I told her that I was on this webinar, keeps calling. The joys of having a 12-year-old.
All good. All good.
But the ruler acronym, and Robin, correct me if I'm wrong, it's around recognizing, understanding, the L I'm forgetting.
Labeling, expressing, and regulating.
And so really the whole concept of the program is just this teaching children that there's not just, like kind of sad, mad, and bad emotions and happy, but that there are multiple different emotions, some, sort of maybe more complex than others. We can be nervous and excited at the same time. We can, have mixed emotions about an event. So a lot of what really focuses on is labeling the emotion, but not labeling it in terms of a positive or negative emotion, but just stating what the emotion is and how it's either making me feel energetic and, sort of ready to tackle the world, or a little bit lower in energy. And really start these conversations with children that are a little bit more complex around emotion than, are you happy or are you sad today? And like, putting a happy face on if you're, happy, and, but really thinking, okay, how are you feeling? And also how might your peers be feeling? So recognizing not only your own emotion, but the emotion of others as well. And how, emotions interact with one another, right? So if you're really happy, but your friend's sad, how can you sort of come together to talk with each other about how you both are feeling?
Totally true. Is now, maybe Erin, I'll keep you on for this one. Is there too young of an age to start talking about emotions or start giving them a label? Or is it, let's just say, go from the very beginning? Because children, they show so many different types of emotions and so many different faces. Is there too young of an age to start talking about it, or not really?
No, I don't think so. And I think it's like anything, if you avoid something, then it sort of can become bigger than it is, or kids put a value on it when really there shouldn't be. So if you have a 1-year-old and they're really frustrated all the time, instead of saying, oh, it seems like you're mad, well, maybe it's more like, it seems like you're frustrated that you can't reach that toy. So, repeating, it's like, you're not going to understand what frustrated is, right, the first time you hear it. But maybe if you are judging sort of how a child is when they're frustrated that something's not working out for them versus mad,
Yeah,
that somebody took their toy, you can start sort of teasing apart these emotions for kids and helping them recognize that there are differences in emotions, and how to handle those differences in emotions, both their own and others.
That's a key piece. And actually, this ties in really well. I wanted to talk a little bit about the study that had to do with the puppets. And it was more around, was there particular reasons why puppets were used? I know there's so many different things out there now that do show emotion. Was there a particular reason why it was a puppet, or was it something more that it's something in size the children could relate to, or what was around that thinking?
So I think there were several different reasons. One being this idea of the psychological distance, sort of that any toy can present. So, it's not, excuse me,
It's all good.
you're not just talking about yourself. You're sort of, talking about this representation of yourself in a way. Also, it was a way to have children interact with each other around these topics of emotion, but using the puppets so that, it's a little harder maybe with other toys to actually have that engagement between, around this topic of emotion, right? And there were different sizes. So there were large puppets that the teachers and facilitators would use to talk about, and then each child got all 4 puppets as well. So it was sort of this way for them to take what they were doing in the classroom also home with them. Because there is so much research, right, showing that what happens if there's this connection between what children are hearing and doing in the classroom and at home, it sort of provides this sense of routine and comfort, and children tend to learn more that way. So I hope that answered your question.
Very much. No, very much so. And then Erin or Rob, whoever wants to take the next one, I want to shift and talk a little bit about toys, because I know that was part of what you guys were talking about in your presentation here. But one of them was, this is actually a question coming from the audience. And of course, I'm sure there has to be several different types of offerings within, childcare centers. When it comes to like toy options that need to be offered, some of that is like set out in regards to like what they need to do with their license, things like that. But is there any way to, or recommendations you may have when it comes to maybe giving out some of those smaller amounts of toys, like you'd mentioned, and how it can bring them down, bring down the energy that's in the room, especially if you do have a lot of that high energy. I had a classroom full of boys at one point, and I tend to put out a little less because of that, because they'd stay longer. Any recommendations for keeping the toys maybe at the minimum, but of course a selection for those who need it?
Well, I think some of it, and Robin, jump in. Sorry, I don't want to speak for you too, but it's, depending on how large a classroom you have too, right?
Of course.
But if you can sort of, have either, center areas or whatever you want to call it, where, kids are sort of spending 10, 15 minutes in that area and you only have 4 toys in that area. And maybe you sort of rotate the toys that are in the areas that different kids are going to, but that you don't have this, large selection of toys in any one area of the classroom, I think would be one way to handle it. Or to have like switch toys out, right? So, maybe you only do have 6 or 7 toys in the classroom, but those 6 or 7 toys are going to change every 3 days, or, sort of do toy rotation that way. I think fewer toys also is helpful in helping children sort of negotiate conflict, maybe, which is, sort of another topic, but it's so important, right? Is like learning how to, come to sort of an agreement when you both want the toy and there's a bit of a conflict over it. So that's sort of another benefit, I think, of having fewer toys. So I would say, location in the classroom and or rotating in and out, the toys that you have.
Yeah, I agree with you. It totally does depend on the situation. Like you said, the size of the class, the amount of children you have in the classroom, it can play a huge part into what you do decide to do. And that actually ties in. I know you said we're talking about conflict. Let's just go there for a second, because one of the questions was, can we control a child who's always carrying around a toy that another toy may want as a caregiver? Because I know this, you'd kind of gone there. So I wanted to go there and actually go ahead and ask the question. Is any thoughts around this, especially if maybe you are trying this limited idea and maybe trying to see what would happen within your classroom? Is there a way you could suggest to go about this, Guy?
So I think it's tricky, right? Because you also want the child who seems particularly, interested in the toy. There might be a reason for that too. Yeah. So it could be some sort of transitional object for them, and sort of delving a little bit more into why that toy is so important. This might help in the long run, but I think just like talking about emotions, it's often never too young to, excuse me, bring children together, sort of, to the table, to talk about how each one is feeling around this toy, and to come up with maybe a plan together around either playing with a toy together, or when one child gets to play with a toy and when the other child gets to play with a toy, and having the children have agency in that decision. Because, we know so much of sort of frustration right in early childhood is this feeling of a lack of agency or control or, routine. And sometimes that just comes out in behavior like that, where it's like, I have to have this toy, but maybe it's more about a bigger issue of, not feeling like they maybe know what happens at the end of the day when they go home, or, there could be a lot tied to it. So,
totally.
I think it's never too early to start having those conversations, both one-on-one with children, and then the children coming together to come up with a plan with
you. So actually talking about play and social emotional a little bit so Robin, you had mentioned the like the play plan. Any maybe more details you can give on this, Guy? I think for myself, it's maybe wanting to resonate with it in regards to maybe any key tips or tricks and educators or moms and dads can use when it comes to maybe setting them up for success with a play plan. And also, Erin, feel free to jump in. I'm just giving you a break.
So play planning is a concept that comes from the tools of mind approach. Maybe there are some people who are on today who use that approach. But I would say for some tips that if parents want to try this at home, it's good to take it slow, keep your expectations realistic at the beginning and work it into the routine as something you do every day and something that's fun for the kid, right? So the planning the play is part of the activity, and you can keep it a good developmental match to their skills, right? So a plan can be a scribble on a piece of paper that means a lot to the child, but to anyone else, it might not mean anything. But for them, that represents their plan. As they get older, it can be, they could write a sentence about what they want to do during the morning. And then that way it builds in literacy skills at the same time.
Fantastic. I really like this idea. I think about how I can adapt it and how I can use it, and something that I'd never thought of before. And then, sorry, you'd mentioned it's a specific type of, sorry, you mentioned the name of it. Now it's just gone right out of my head, of course, when I need it. Shoot, not learning style, but Robin, help me.
Tools of the mind?
Tools, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I've never actually heard of that. Maybe could you brief highlight of that?
Yeah, Erin, can you give a little
Or Erin, whoever.
summary of what that is?
Sure. So, excuse me, it was based on a lot of like the ideas of Lev Vygotsky and sort of scaffolding. This idea that you could scaffold play basically by, you know, working with children around, you know, sometimes maybe bringing like the complexity of the play to a slightly higher level than maybe they were at on their own. So basically building on this notion of scaffolding.
Okay, gotcha. I want to jump back. One more question here for you before we do jump into wrap up. And is there too young of an age in which you should maybe start? I know you guys had been talking about the study where reducing the toys in the classroom. Is there a young age to start that at? Is it more of just, you know, per child? Because we know every child is unique and it comes and goes. And of course, every center is unique. But is there any idea around when that would be something you could implement and potentially be highly successful with?
I think from the beginning, you know, I think it also could vary throughout the year as well, right? Both because of developmental, you know, changes, but also just, you know, as children become more comfortable with the toys that they're seeing, then maybe they'll spend more time, even if you have 12 toys and they've seen all 12 toys for a while, you know, they'll then spend more time on individual toys. Because I think a lot of probably what that study was showing was it's this idea of a lot of novelty and like overstimulation. So I think, you know, it was numbers in terms of that study, but I'm sure there'll probably be other research that will come out that will show it's also probably like novelty, complexity of the toy and all these sorts of things that will impact it. But I think from the beginning.
I think that's so cool. I'm super interested, and I'm gonna do some homework later this evening. Okay, one last question, and Erin, maybe I'll direct this one at you. When it comes to, and of course I just lost it on the chat here. That's of course always what happens when I'm looking at the question, then it disappears, everyone's typing. Okay, yeah, here it is. So you're talking about like independent play and the idea, and continuing on a little bit more around how it would extend, you know, hopefully extend some play, maybe not for those fast moving children. But what about collaboration and building on the collaboration side? Is there any recommendations around, you know, maybe getting children, of course we know 2-year-olds are very independent and they move into that phase where all of a sudden we all want friends at like 3 and 4. But is there any recommendations or studies that have been put out about increasing and encouraging collaboration and building those friendships with children?
Well, I think that some research, and I'm just going also by having been a kindergarten teacher and a school counselor myself, is
love it.
Really like finding things that children are interested in together, right? So, you know, if you have 2 children who seem really interested in the classroom around, you know, the solar system, or, you know, that might be a little big of a topic, but, you know, let's say something like the solar system, and you can play with them around, you know, these toy planets, and then gradually sort of, you know, step away a little bit and encourage them to play just the 2 of them. But I think, like Robin was saying, even with collaborative play, it involves a lot of scaffolding for children, just like independent play does, especially when they're young, right? Because there is that tendency to like parallel play and sort of do your own thing a little bit, even though you're checking out what your friend's doing. But you can definitely foster coming together around something of you know, that you're both interested in. So I think that's really a great way to start children thinking around, you know, oh, you're both, you know, in the cooking area. Oh, look, what if we could make an omelet, you know, here's, let's take this egg and, oh, you can put it in the pan. And, you know, maybe that's all the collaborative play that goes on that day. But then the next day, if they're still, you know, in the kitchen scene, then you ratchet it up a notch and you leave. So I would say scaffold.
So many ways, in so many ways. Erin and Robin, it's been absolutely fantastic having you both on, but I'm going to leave you here, Erin, for yourself, if you want to start. Any last words of advice, pieces of wisdom, happy thoughts you want to leave the folks with today?
Oh, well, thanks so much for having us. And yeah, I mean, I think it's preaching to the choir, but really, allowing children the time and the freedom to play and not feeling, excuse me, restricted in sort of some of these quote unquote more, academic skills that are sometimes emphasized in less, educational context, but sometimes by, people who are anxious about their kids getting these skills maybe a little earlier than they need to. And I also would say, I think guided play is going to be something that might be really important as children come back to the classroom who might have been away from the classroom this past year. So, really supporting them again along the lines of helping them with collaborative play, but maybe sort of guiding them through some of these scenarios. Maybe children are going to be anxious about being back,
For sure.
excited, and, using that guided play to kind of figure out what's going on.
Awesome. Erin, thank you so much. Robin, the same for you.
Thank you.
Any last words of advice, pieces of wisdom, happy thoughts you want to leave the crew with today?
Thank you so much. I would say, use your experience and observe kids and follow your instincts, right? Your instincts as an educator are the most valuable thing that you have. So whether it's something like toy rotation, there's no prescriptive steps you need to take. You can step back and observe and decide what works for the kids in your individual classroom, right? So that's all I have to say for final words. Thank you so much, everybody. This was so fun.
Thank you so much. Robin, Erin from Scientific Mummy. Thank you. Thank you. Folks, we're going to include every link I possibly can for you in the show notes. So please do connect up with Erin and Robin. They're fantastic. And if you haven't, please do follow them either on Twitter or on Instagram. Like I said, we'll connect you up with everything so you have all that. And before we do, in the show notes email today, we're going to be sending out a small survey. Please do take some time to fill that out. Erin and Robin would love some feedback. So I'm going to make sure to include that in the show notes email. Okay, next week, let's jump into wrap up. We're going to be talking about children with developmental delays and autism. I'm very, very excited to welcome Dr. Kara Goodwin on. She's fantastic. I am excited. This has been a hot topic just to talk about, especially during COVID, being able to support these special needs children, I say superpowers. If anything, they're superpowers to me. But we're talking next week, same time, 2 p.m., June 10th. I can't believe it is June already. Last but not least, I saw a bit of confusion coming up in the chat. For those who attended the live session, I will be emailing you the certificate. It will have your name, I'll have your center name. It does come from how you registered, just as a friendly reminder. So please, please just keep your eye out. I'll be sending that out by early next week. And if you do access the recording, there is a certificate available to you. You just have to pop in your name and your center name afterwards. So lastly, before we do finally wrap up, if you haven't heard Erin's podcast with Ron, I highly, highly recommend a listen. It was amazing. I was walking and I think I walked faster because of it. Please, 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 I will include this as well in the show notes email for you to check out because it is a fantastic listen. So please don't be, please just check it out. It's fantastic. So thank you once again. Erin and Robin, thank you for being a part of today. It's been absolutely fabulous having you both on. And Miss Kaya, please let me know, have I missed anything? I always check before I say we're done.
Yeah, fantastic session. Thank you so much, Robin and Erin. I'm so happy I found your account on social media. It is so full of amazing resources for educators and for parents. I've been popping it in the chat there. So if you haven't already, check out their website and their Instagram. Really great bite-sized pieces of information on their websites and social media. So thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you. That's a very nice ego boost to hear.
Thank you.
Tons. I agree to echo what Kaya said. Tons and tons of resources. A phenomenal send. So thank you from everyone here at Hi Mama. It's been a pleasure. The last hour has gone by quickly. Until next week's folks, take care. Have a good one. Bye.